Hello guys, welcome to the presentation. Our topic is the types and motivations of code switching among UML students in multilingualism classes. Now let's come to research objective part. We have two objectives. The first one is to investigate the type of code switching most commonly used by students at in multilingualism class. The second one is to explore the underlying motivations that drive students at to engage in code switching in multilingualism classes. The significance of them are identifying the previous type of code switch among students can provide insights into their linguistic behavior in academic settings. And the significance of the second objective is it can further investigate students' initial intentions when switching code.
Now I will introduce the introduction part. First is our research background. Code switching means alternating between two or more languages during communication. According to Garcia and Lee, 2014, a well-considered use of code switching improved understanding and active participation in bilingual or multilingual learning settings. Increasing number of papers have been conducted to research code switching in classroom. Code switching in classroom interactions reflect not merely the common types that learners adopt, but also the underlying motivation. There are two frameworks of our research. About types, we took Poplec's theory. He proposed that several genres of code switching, namely intra-sentential, inter-sentential, and text switching. About the motivation, we adopt Bister's 2010 study as framework. He explored the dominant factors of code switching in international classrooms. Many studies have highlighted that the practical benefits of code switching, emphasizing its function in narrowing linguistic gaps and creating nice classroom interaction. Our research aims to investigate the types and underlying motivation for code switching among most students during multilingualism classroom interaction at There are two research questions follow. Number one, what are the main types of code switching among male students during multilingualism classroom interaction at Number two, what are the underlying motivations driving students' code switching behavior in the classroom? Next, let's move to the literature review part. Wainwright, 1953, gave a preliminary definition of code switching, which was depicted as alternately utilizing two different languages during a conversation. Poplak proposed three main types, and Miskin 1997 defined three patterns of code switching within a sentence, namely alteration, insertion, and lexicalization. Recently, more and more studies are conducted to research code switching in classroom from teaching and learning perspectives. First of all, let's start with teachers' perspectives. Bahati et al. 2018 researched detailed types adopted by the teachers in EFL classrooms in Pakistan. Hussain et al. 2020 aimed to explore the function of teachers' code switching during English class in Jordan. The main functions, namely establishment of close relationship with students, clear instructions, and the lack of language proficiency. There are also some studies of code switching in the classroom from EFL learners' perspectives. Yan and Nuha, 2019, investigated the motivation for Indonesian EFL learners' code switching. The underlying motivations were boosted comprehension, confidence, and a new vocabulary. The code switching also decreased confusion and misunderstandings. Muthasamy et al. 2020 and Raza et al. 2022 conducted two studies in the Malaysia and Pakistani context respectively. The learners reflected that code switching facilitated speaking skills and declined misunderstandings among multilingual communities. After reviewing the literature, and there exist gaps based on a topic, the discussion about the various language code switching among male students during multilingualism classroom interactions at is still a gap. The studies based on EFL learners' perspectives to explore the code switching types and underlying motivations during their class interactions are limited. That's all about my part. Next, please.
Then, let's move on to methodology part. In terms of data selection, a purposive sampling method was employed to select participants currently enrolled in multilingualism course within the math program at University Malaya, and we choose students from various backgrounds. such as Malays, Arabics, and Chinese. And as for interviews, 2 Chinese students, 1 Malay student, and 1 Arabic student were invited to our interview. And regarding the questionnaire, we received 50 responses, which were not only limited to participants from our current OCC1 multilingualism club, but also included answers from students in OCC2, 3, 4, and 5. And let's move on to data preparation. In terms of data cleaning, interview recordings were transcribed into text, which transcript double-checked for accuracy, and any irrelevant information were removed. Questionnaire responses were reviewed for whether it is complete or not. And in terms of data transformation, qualitative interview responses were coded into things based on code switching types and motivations, while at the same time, questionnaire data were categorized, and the Likert scale response were converted into numbers to simplify statistical analysis. And in terms of data organization, interview data was stored in text format for mathematical analysis, and survey data, which is questionnaire, were entered into statistical software for quantitative analysis. Let's move on to analysis plan. We apply a mixed method, which combine qualitative method and quantitative method together. Qualitative data will be analyzed using semantic analysis. A Black's framework will be applied to categorize code switching into intra-sentential, inter-sentential, and text switching. Bayes-Stars motivational model will be used to explore motivations. Quantitative data from questionnaire will be analyzed using descriptive statistics. Frequencies and percentages will summarize the demographic profile, code switching types, and context.
Hello, my name is SYAZANA, and now we are entering part 5 of the presentation, which is data analysis and findings and interpretation. So I will be presenting the data analysis of our interview and questionnaire data. So firstly, we carried out an interview, and this interview particularly focused on finding out the participants' usage of code switching, their motivations for code switching, and the impact of code switching in a classroom environment. And we had a total of 4 interviewees who are from University Malaya's MELS program, and they will be referred to as A, B, C, and D throughout this data analysis. So interview A, B, and C are Chinese who are born in China with Mandarin Chinese as their first language, and interview D is a Malay born in Malaysia with Bahasa Melayu as their first language. So firstly, we asked when did they first learn English and how would they assess their English proficiency. So interview A, B, and C, who are from China, said that they started learning English when they were in primary school, and interview D said they started learning when they were in kindergarten, and all of the interviewees thought that their English proficiency was decent. So secondly, we asked how often do they switch to their native language or to another language when they're speaking in class. And interviewee A, B, and D said they often code switch in the classroom, and some examples include like flexibly switching to Mandarin to communicate more easily. And interviewee C said that they would code switch sometimes when speaking English by substituting certain unfamiliar words with Mandarin instead. So question 3, we asked what are the main reasons for their code switching in class. So interviewee A said it is to better understand the course content and express their ideas. Interviewee B said it was to enhance communication because English doesn't feel precise enough. Interviewee C said they had a lack of proficiency in English and would code switch to avoid misunderstandings. And interviewee D said they would code switch to explain terms easier to others, although they do not use it that much. And question 4, we asked them, does code switching affect their understanding of academic content? So interviewee A, C, and D said that code switching has been a positive thing in helping them understanding the academic content, and only interviewee B mentioned that code switching had both positive and negative impacts on their academic performance. Now we will move on to the questionnaire. So we disseminated a questionnaire to discover the frequency, context, and motivations for code switching among male students at UM, and the respondents were required to answer 20 questions, which included multiple choice questions and Likert scale items. So we distributed this online through social applications, and we obtained a total of 50 respondents who answered the questionnaire. So now we will move to the important demographic information. So based on the data we obtained, overwhelming majority of our respondents are first language speakers of Mandarin Chinese with a frequency of 45 at 90% of our respondents. So we can see that the MELS program is consisted mostly of Mandarin Chinese first language speakers compared to the other languages. We also had respondents who spoke other languages as their first language, such as English, Bahasa Melayu, Arabic, and Tamil. Next, we also asked our respondents' familiarity with English, and from what we can see, only 3 people answered that they were familiar with English as a first language, and the rest of our respondents chose as they were familiar with English as a second language, and they were familiar with English as a foreign language, which is actually quite equally split, with 23 for familiar as a second language and 24 for familiar as a foreign language. So from what we can see here, most of our respondents do not speak English as a first language. So next we asked them the frequency and context of code switching in the classroom. And for what we can see is our respondents have used code switching in the classroom at least once, because 0 answered never, and most of our respondents chose sometimes, which is followed by often, and then rarely, with always being the least. So we can see that code switching is actually quite popular in the classroom, as there's always an instance of someone using it. Next, we asked a question that would determine what type of code switching was most popular among our respondents. And to do this, we provided 3 sentences that would reflect each type of code switching. As an example, for the first sentence, it would reflect intrasentential code switching. For the second sentence, it would reflect intersentential code switching. And for the third sentence, it would reflect tag switching. Choose more than one sentence that reflected their most used type of code switching. And we provided 3 variations of this question, one in Mandarin Chinese, one in Bahasa Melayu, and one in Arabic. So here is the data for our Mandarin Chinese question. And from this, we can see that intrasentential code switching is the most popular type of code switching among the Mandarin Chinese speakers, which is followed by intersentential and then tag switching. We also tabulated the data for our other questions in Bahasa Melayu and Arabic. For our Bahasa Melayu questions, 4 respondents answered. And as we can see, there is an instance of all types of code switching in the responses for the Bahasa Melayu question, with intersentential actually being the most, followed by tag switching, and then intrasentential code switching. And for our Arabic question, we only had 1 respondent, and they chose intersentential code switching. So next we'll move to the motivations for code switching. So for this part, we provided 11 statements that related to possible motivations for code switching, and we made our respondents to rate each statement based on a Likert scale, where 1 indicated strongly disagree and 5 indicated strongly agree. So from what we can see in this first statement, I switch languages to fill gaps when I forget a word or phrase in the language I'm using. So we actually identified this motivation as one of the most popular one of the most popular motivations, as it had a high amount of people agreeing with it, but also there were 0% of people who chose strongly disagree, and only 5 people who chose disagree, with a reasonable amount who chose neutral, which made it one of the more preferred motivations among our respondents. So for our next motivation, it states, I use code switching to simplify my explanation for someone who may not understand the primary language being used. This is also one of the most popular motivations that was chosen by our respondents, with only 3 people who disagreed and none choosing strongly disagree, and also a reasonable amount of people who chose neutral, which is only 10. So, for what we can see, these 2 statements are the most agreeable ones, as not only do they have a high amount of people that agreed with them, but also none who chose strongly disagree, with a low ratio of people who chose disagree and neutral. But for this next one, I unconsciously use code switching because it has been a crucial part of my natural speaking style in multilingual contexts. Although this one has a high number of people who agree, which is 18, but it also has a very high number of people who were quite neutral, and an abnormally high number of people who disagreed with it compared to our other motivations, and 2 people who strongly disagreed. So while this motivation was highly agreed, but we saw it as an anomaly because it was more disagreed than the others. So it was quite less popular compared to the other motivations that were provided. Yes. So the 3 motivations that I have just explained are the ones that we would like to mostly focus on, but we also touched on a couple of other motivations that we had our respondents to rate.
Now it's the findings and the interpretation part. Let's look at the research question 1, which explores the main types of code switching observed among male students during classroom interactions on multilingualism at University Malaya. First, it's important to notice that a majority of the respondents are native Mandarin Chinese speakers, making them the primary demographic in this research setting. Among the different types of code switching identified, intersentential code switching is the most frequently used. This is followed by the intersentential code switching, which tag switching is the least common. And lower occurrences of tag switching among Mandarin Chinese speakers may be influenced by the linguistic differences that make this form of code switching this letter of intuitive in their speech patterns. All of the participants in this study are master's students in English language study at the University Malaya who possess a high level of English proficiency. This is a prerequisite for admission into the program, ensuring that all the respondents have the strong command of the language. It's worth highlighting that the intersentential code switch, the most complex form, requires speakers to adhere the syntax rules between 2 languages. As Lipik noticed, this type of switch demands a higher grade of language mastery, further underscoring the proficiency of the students in this study. Now let's move on to the research question 2, which examines the underlying motivation behind student code switching behavior in the classroom. The responses from section 3 of the questionnaire reveal 2 key reasons that most students agreed with. The first is, I switch language to fill gaps when I forget a word or phrase in a language that I used. The second one is, I use code switching to simplify my explanation for someone who may not understand the primary language be used in a context for male's classroom, where the majority of students are native Mandarin Chinese speaker. Code switching often becomes a useful strategy when students need to explain English terms or concepts. It's often easier and more efficient to simplify their utterances by mixing in Mandarin or substituting certain words with the first language. For example, interviewee A shared in a group discussion collaborative tasks. If my classmates have different level of English, I will flexibly switch to Mandarin in order to communicate and complete the task more efficiently. highlights one of the most popular motivation for code switching. It is the serve as a sign of solidarity of collectivism among the Mandarin Chinese speaker who form the majority in this learning environment.
In conclusion, the most important type of UM-IO students code switching is inter-sentinel code switching, where the language switch occurs within a single sentence, clause, or phrase, and followed by inter-sentinel code switching, as well as text switching. Meanwhile, UM-IO code switching is also motivated by the intention of filling gaps at the time they forget a word or phrase in current language, as well as simplifying explanation for receivers with different language backgrounds. In addition, this investigation contributes to seed students and language acquisition among F students by reflecting the feature of how male students compose sentences as bilingual or multilingual. However, limitations also exist as the results may lack universality due to the limited number of participants selected. Also, the objective effect may be caused considering that well-trained students might be conscious of the process of linguistic observation. In conclusion, future studies can select participants from different regions to examine whether the types and motivations in this research are right or not. Thank you for your listening to our presentation. Bye.